What is the value of visiting a gallery? Aged 9 in 1988, I was brought by my parents to London to see the late Picasso at Tate Millbank. I didn't enjoy being in the gallery. I remember having a headache and sitting on a bench, kicking my heels, looking at the paintings obliquely. My parents remember a sullen, difficult child being churlishly nudged around the show. When we got home, to my parents' surprise, I began to draw profusely, responding to the overall disintegrated aesthetic of the show with real enthusiasm. It had a profound and lasting impact. I still have the same relationship with exhibitions. I've come to accept that the museum or the gallery is not an ideal setting for me to encounter artworks. It doesn't matter how many coffee shops or seats or wall text there are, the public nature of an exhibition, the requirement for there to be a large number of works, the hushed, processing crowds of people facing the walls of a brightly lit room, is a strange scenario and definitely not a relaxing or easy one. I still get a headache if I stay in a show for too long. I tend to go for maybe 15 minutes, half an hour at the most. Inevitably, the quantity of works is vastly beyond my capacity for understanding or appreciation at the time, and I switch off. The value of an exhibition, as I see it, is in exposure, a quite confrontational event which can surprise or confuse me and from which I take time to recover. So I try to go into a show on the first visit with the intention of being open to the opportunity for absorbing, willy-nilly, things that pique my interest, and letting those little dramas unfold in my memory over time, at home, in drawings or paintings or notes or conversation. I also know now that the key for me is not the visit, but the revisit. I get season tickets if I can, ones that let me go back and back again. Permanent collections are a godsend, except when the piece of work you're having a relationship with gets loaned out. I went to the recent Picasso exhibition at the National Gallery, Picasso Challenging the Past, 4 or 5 times, sometimes at the start of the day so that I could have the last reams to myself, sometimes at the end of the day when the crowd had moved out the first reams. I went alone and with different people. The point for me is that the works in a show change according to how and when you see them, just as they are changed by the specific curation of the show. And the wonderful thing is that they belong to you in as much as their meaning is shaped by your view of them, and your view is inflected with the copious details of a specific moment, like the time of day, what you watched on TV last night, the walk across the river to get to the gallery, and so on. Repeating your encounter with a work or an exhibition allows for a rich narrative to develop and for the questions that crowd out your head initially to break off into more discrete avenues of inquiry. For me, this fencing exercise with artworks and exhibitions is deeply rewarding. But it isn't leisure, it's work. I don't see anything wrong with that. I'm very happy with it. But I think there is an idea that exhibitions should be fun, and that if you don't feel the fun, then you're missing the point, or you're not receptive.
Okay, I think in terms of thinking about the value of the gallery, I sort of have to start off by thinking about the notion of what a gallery is. And for me, obviously that has a kind of series of it's kind of multifaceted in terms of, having a function in terms of kind of presenting artwork that has been authored and authorised by an institution and a whole set of individuals who have a particular criteria and agenda that shapes kind of art history. So it has an intrinsic value in terms of creating a forum for presenting artwork. But in addition to that, a gallery is also a kind of sort of public and social space. It's and it brings with it the dynamics of a social space in terms of that kind of interaction of groups of people being in a particular place for a particular reason. So for me, I think I'm quite interested in these different kind of sort of layers that sort of come into being when you go to an exhibition or go to a gallery. So in a sense, what often might be the initial framework for it is the kind of to see the work and this idea of entering a space which is about, in a way, the experience of encountering the work, and also the idea of sort of gaining or acquiring knowledge or some kind of understanding from spending time with the work and viewing the work. So that's a primary thing, but I'm always, I think, really conscious of that kind of, that weird social aspect of it, of being kind of on display as well. And because it's a space in which kind of the idea of observation and analysis and criticality, I think for me, is heightened. I'm always aware of the kind of sort of performativity of standing in front of work and being aware of the dynamics of a space where people are looking and are watching and are constantly watching. And without wanting to sound paranoid, I think that is always a kind of heightened feeling. So I think, as well, I'm sort of trying to think about this idea of how those layers kind of sort of meaning and experience kind of intersect and can often sort of cloud readings of the work. So sometimes I kind of go into galleries and I'm kind of overwhelmed by, you know, if it's a busy gallery, overwhelmed by sort of the people, and the work kind of gets completely lost. And then the experience of being in there becomes the kind of experience of being surrounded by all these other people. And I think of a situation in which I saw the Mark Rothko show actually here at Tate Modern, and it was incredibly busy. And there's always that sense, that classical sense, when you look at Rothko, it's about this kind of, you know, sense of you being immersed within the work, and that was completely impossible. And it ended up being that my experience of the work was mediated by all these other people that were there and wondering what their experience is. So I felt very removed. But anyway, I think that the value of visiting the gallery for me is very contextual, and you know, it sounds very obvious and maybe a bit dumb to say, but I think it shifts depending on things like my mood and the experience of getting there even. For example, there's always that thing of like, if you're looking for a smaller gallery that you've never been to before, that's in some obscure location, often there's this heightened thing of, if you've spent ages looking for it, your expectations of it are completely shifted than if it's something that you find really easily. So I think it's very much reinforced by the whole, your mood and your sort of psychological frame in terms of how you encounter the actual gallery itself.